So as we approach the mid-year budget, I wanted to start with the general fund and what it accounts for. The general fund represents all of the general education for the district, as well as our special education programs and activities outside of the center programs. So it does not include the wing like programs of the severe cognitively impaired, severe multiply impaired, or the mainstream deaf and hard of hearing costs. It also includes preschool through 12th grade and beyond, including up to the age of 26 for our special education students. What it does not account for in the general fund: repairs, instructional technology, safety and security initiatives that are provided through the sinking fund. And of note, over the past 5 years, the sinking fund has had activities just under $12 million. COVID funding helped offset some of our sinking fund activities, paid for student devices and other needs, safety, security, et cetera. In terms of educational spending in the United States, Michigan ranks 27th in kindergarten through 12th grade school spending and 24th in funding. This was noted in a data publication that was produced in June of 2022 with the link listed on this slide. What's changed with our mid-year budget? We started this year with an audited fund balance of $20.158 million in the general fund. Our revenues projected at mid-year are $105.3 million. Our expenses in the general fund, including transfers out, are $104.99 million, just under $105 million, for a surplus projection of $330,918. We are showing a projected fund balance with this mid-year of $20.489 million, or 19.51% of our expenditures. So as we look at our revenue changes, we started with our original budget revenue projection of $102.8 million, almost $102.9 million. We have an increase in local revenues of $1.3 million, the majority of which is the local share of the foundation taxes at $1 million. We do have some pickup. I've got things listed here. I won't read every item to you, but interest income has picked up by $250,000 from the original budget. In terms of the state revenue, we have an overall decrease of $638,000. As noted earlier tonight, our enrollment had declined off of our original budget. The impact on our state foundation, based on that enrollment, was a decline of $2.255 million, of which $1 million was an increase with the blend between the local property taxes with the state share of the foundation. We have new state grants that are recurring, which means we anticipate that same funding level to maintain going forward of $531,000. We also have state grants that are carryover non-recurring new funding of just under $700,000. And we have a slight adjustment to the MEPSR's non-UAL funding of about $392,000. Typically, we'll see that adjust with final budget. More importantly, our UAL funding has increased from our original budget to this mid-year by $970,000. Just as a point of reference for our community and board members that might not be fully aware, the UAL funding is funding that's given to the district that we immediately pay back out. We don't control it. It goes to fund the underfunded retirement account. And all in for this current year, UAL at mid-year is $10.3 million. That's $10.3 million of our overall expenses. It's nearly 10% of our general fund expenses. Federal revenues have increased by $1.3 million. The majority of these grants are more COVID funding grants that we're getting. These are non-recurring grants. We have the FEMA funding that I'm hoping that we're finally going to get this revenue that we've been waiting on since 2021 of $226,000 for expenses that we paid out in 2021. I check every month with our advisor with Michigan State Police, and I'm assured that it's in the final review process with FEMA. So here's hoping we have it by June 30th. We have an Oakland County mental health grant that was received for $350,000, of which we're anticipating utilizing half of that this current year, and the other half will be utilized during next fiscal year when that budget is opened up. We have inter-district revenues and transfers. The PA-18, we had a one-time additional distribution from Oakland schools because their fund balance was a little bit greater at final budget in their audit than what they originally anticipated, so that's $132,000. And we have a transfer coming in from the Center Program Fund, an increase of $379,000, and that is to pay the general fund back for special education legal costs from fiscal year 15 through fiscal year 22. So that will be a one-time only revenue transfer in. The center program reserves are for special education needs, so it's a way of those excess reserves in the center fund paying back for special education related costs within the general fund. Our foundation allowance is comprised of a blend of the millage tax along with the state portion. That's why you see the change between the local and the state. Our foundation allowance was increased to the $9,150 per pupil, which is now equalized statewide for every district. In terms of the breakout of our revenue, 50% comes from the state of Michigan. 36% is local, which is primarily the local property taxes. That is the local property tax share of our foundation allowance. We have 6% federal funding and 7%, which is interdistrict or transfers in. Interdistrict would be the PA-18 millage that is provided back to Bloomfield Hills from the tax collection that happens at the county level. When we look at the combination as to what our foundation allowance comprises of within the general fund, 66% of our general fund revenue comes from our foundation allowance. Then we have our other interdistrict transfers in, the federal grants. 3% of our general fund revenue is local streams of revenue other than taxes. So it's not significant. It's the interest income, facility rentals, but it's not a tremendous portion of the $100 million that's in the general fund. And then we have 18%, which is state categorical grants. That would include that $10 million of the UAL. As we look at our expenditures, we started this year with an original budget of expenditures of $103.3 million. Staff compensation salaries had decreased by $331,000. Benefits, you can see the increase for that retirement, that UAL of the $970,000. But more importantly, we offered to try to retain and recruit staff the opportunity to be hired through EduStaff and avoid the retirement system and actually get a higher wage. We did this for several groups, the bus drivers, child care workers, and others, in order to try to make it more appealing to come work for Bloomfield Hills. To get that higher wage, we're not paying the retirement taxes. We also extended to our custodial team through EnviroClean this year a $2 per hour wage to try to contain and recruit and have the staff that we need. There's other small changes with utilities and teaching and testing supplies. More importantly, at the very end, you'll see an increase transfer out to the capital equipment fund. One of our budget balancing action items as we opened up this year was to reduce that $1 million transfer to $750. With our improved projections for this current year, we've restored that to the $1 million that it was previously at. The capital equipment fund is used to pay for non-student technology devices, general education buses. Our special education buses are funded through the Center Program Fund. So all in, our expenditures have increased by about 1.7% or $1.7 million to a total anticipated budget expenditures of just under $105 million. How that money is spent, we spend 47% on salaries and 36% on benefits. We spend 8.6% on purchase services, which includes $4.2 million for contractual substitute, those EduStaff agreements that we listed, our contracted custodian positions. And so there's not a whole lot that's spent or left on supplies and others. It really is our people. We have outgoing tuition that is listed at, oh my gosh, which slide? The $3.4 million. And that includes our tuition that we send for our students that are going to Wing Lake or the DHH program, as well as special education students that might be going to other programs that we don't offer internally. Perhaps it's an autism classroom at another center program and other agreements that we have. So as we look forward, it's important to note that while we have a surplus right now, we still are facing a funding cliff. I bring up the non-recurring grants for a reason. Those grants are going away. COVID funding, we have it this year, we'll have it again next year. It will all be gone and dried up by the federal government by the time we hit fiscal year 25. So it's very important that the district continue with our ongoing budget planning and action items that we continually do. We're continually looking at enrollment and recruitment and retention. We have our family ambassadors that are going out and providing tours and working with families to encourage them to come join Bloomfield Hills Schools. We continue to look at our budget balancing action items, reviewing in detail any time that there is a resignation or a retirement. What might we do differently? How do we retain that student experience and keep our funds in the classroom first? We have continued efforts to recruit and retain employees. The choices offered, as noted earlier, for edu staff. We're still challenged with trying to find bus drivers. We know today there was a notice where we had to cancel bus 41. We didn't have enough drivers. It's challenging. We continue to keep our eye on all of our discretionary spending to ensure that the resources are always made available to our students in the classroom. I've just given you a slide of our budget planning and adoption, the board policy. And now let's talk about the special revenue funds. We started this year with an audited fund balance of $8.5 million. And at mid-year, we have revenues of $22.7 million and expenses of $23.7. So the expenses are exceeding the revenues by just under $1 million. That's a planned spend. We have an excess fund balance in our food service fund that we have to submit a plan to the Michigan Department of Education and spend that down. We are not allowed to carry greater than 3 months of operational expenditure fund balance in the fund. Because of all the COVID relief for all the free meals, nearly every district is experiencing this. We did submit our plan. We have a plan that was submitted for $775,000. We are asking for the food service equipment at North Hills and South Hills Middle School to be covered. We're also asking for the furniture, the tables and the chairs at Conant and Way for their cafeterias to be covered. We have a transfer out from the Center Program Fund of $682,000. A portion of that was that special education legal fee to the general fund. The other portion is 2 special education buses that have been on order since 2022. And I'm happy to report that yesterday we got one of them. We also got 4 general education buses. So all in, at the end of our projection for June 30th in our special revenue funds, which are the center program, the community recreational fund, the food service fund, the fiscal agency for the Oakma campus, and our student activity funds, we're looking at an overall fund balance of $7.5 million, just under. And now I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you.